Welcome to Black Voices in Distilling, brought to you by American Distilling Institute, the voice of craft distilling, in collaboration with Business and Bourbon. Do better business through building deeper relationships. This episode's guest is Lee Hedgemon of the Barrel B. Let's get it started. Hey all, I want to welcome you back to Black Voices in Distilling. My name is Ronell Richards and I am your host. I am the founder of Business and Bourbon. And again, just so privileged to be part of this great project sponsored by the American Distilling Institute, where we get to elevate some voices and folks that are doing some tremendous work out there in the craft distilling and spirits industries. Today, I have to be honest with you guys, I'm fanboying a little bit because I was really excited to sit down and talk with our guest today. Lee Hedgemon. How are you doing, Lee?
I'm good. I'm tired.
Hey, you're working.
I am. Today I am.
So I understand you're brewing today, right? I
am brewing today. So
that what is that like for you? Those are long days. Those are
So technically I've never been retired from it. I was originally a brewer. That was my first thing I did, was a brewing. So I started a brew fest with a bunch of friends like 6 or 7 years ago. And every year I would brew a beer for it. And last year, the last time I said, oh, I'm not doing it again. I'm retired from this one. And then I got requested to make the same beer that I had made before as a special to bring it back. And so I'm brewing that today.
Is that the glitter beer?
That is the glitter beer.
I am super intrigued. And so here's the thing. I am also, I'm a beer guy. A lot of people don't know that. That was my love, much like you. That was my love before whiskey. So I've been really excited to sit down and talk to you about your story, about your journey, how you got to this point. And as I'm doing my background, I'm like, oh my God, she is so interesting. So if you wouldn't mind, share with us a little bit of how you got to this point and what you're doing today. And we'll talk about what you're doing today. But like, where did this journey start from you in brewing and spirits?
So this started for me, gosh, I have to say, I was in my late 20s and I was learning how to homebrew. And when you learn how to homebrew, it's basically you standing around drinking while the person who actually homebrews does all the work and you go ooh and ah. So I did that for a number of years. But I really didn't get into it until I was writing my dissertation in grad school. And I needed a hobby, something to kind of take my mind off of the stress. I could only play so many video games. And so I was like, okay. So I started making mead and wine, actually. And then I moved to making beer because I was waiting for all my mead and wine to age out so I could drink it. So I needed something I could drink fast. So that's actually how I started making beer. And the funny thing was that I would always take it to these meetings with my advisor and with my committees until finally they were like, we love that you're bringing us bottles of wine and a 6-pack. Can you bring us a chapter next time? Like that sounds like that was where we got to at that point. And I moved back to Portland, Oregon, which is where I'm from, to teach and to finish writing my diss. And I knew when I moved back that I didn't want to do it, but I gave it another 2 years of teaching before at the same time, I was actively looking for brewing jobs. And I laughingly say in Portland, I was like the last person to get a job where I walked into a brewery and I said, I'll wash kegs. I'll volunteer. Like after me, I said, they're not doing any more volunteers because of liability for insurance. I don't know if that was directly related to me. I've never gotten into an accident volunteering, but that's how I got my start.
What is the Pink Boots Society? What is that?
The Pink Boots Society is the professional organization of women, was a professional organization of women in the craft brewing industry.
Okay.
We've since opened it up, the membership, to cider and distilling, because there are a lot of breweries that have moved into actually distilling too. And there were a lot of people who were like, I got thrown into this and I don't know. So They're still brewers, but there are places of doing it. So basically, it's a women's professional organization.
Cool. So while at McMenamins, I understand that you've been pretty creative in some of the beers that you've brewed. I'd like to know a little bit about some of those. What are some that you're maybe the most proud of?
I am most proud of making beers that taste like foods. So I love the idea of deconstructing. It's not just for people who cook. It's not just for fancy chefs. But I love the idea of taking a concept of a food and giving those flavors into a beer. Yeah. And I'm most known for doing dessert beers that aren't sweet. So I did a Neapolitan ice cream one.
Yeah, I'm so intrigued by that.
So that one was, and my other favorite one was a red velvet cake I did. And so I loved the idea of getting chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry and flavors into something. So you had to balance it so well that every sip, if you set it in your mouth long enough, all of those flavors and aromas would show up in there.
Yeah. What do you do to make that happen? Like,
you can do manipulation in mashes. So for like chocolate's easy. We were doing a stout. So it was just a matter of how much chocolate do we want to have in there? Do we want the chocolate to be a light chocolate? Where do you put it in there? And then the strawberries were like, we're putting actual strawberries. And then for the vanilla, we actually had to make an extract of vanilla so that we could get those flavors in without using, because I don't like to use any imitation stuff if I don't have to. Yeah. And so we did all of that. The fun part for the red velvet cake was it had to be a light enough brown that you looked, that when we added beet powder, it would make it give it that redness that's there. So
tell me about where are you distilling now? Tell me about your business. What are you involved in?
Oh, so I love this part of it. In 20,
now limit it, Lee. I need you to limit it to 7 jobs. 7 jobs. I don't need all 10. I know you got 10, but
just 2. So I was at McMenamins for about 4 or 5 years, and then I went to Freelance. And for folks who don't know, it's Freelance Spirits is a woman-owned and operated distillery here in Portland, Oregon. It's been around. This started in 2017. I met Molly, who is our master distiller. Where were we? We were at an event, and we ran into them, and we hit it off. And they said, you should come and work for us. And I said, ooh, I really like where I'm at. And then a year went by, and I was like, I had started a business. So I love distilled spirits, and I'm around barrels constantly. And I'm also a mead maker for a number of years ago as a hobbyist. And I love honey. So I have a company. I started a company where I barrel age honey in used whiskey, rums, distilled spirits barrels from local distilleries. And I work with local apiaries. So I was like, all right, I wanted to kind of focus on that. And I also wanted to do something different. I had a lot more freedom at Freeland. So they made me a wonderful offer of the freedom to run my business and not have it be a conflict, but also work with them and develop new products. And so I'm super creative, and I love the idea of how to kind of take that to the next level. And when I started there, we were just canned cocktails hadn't quite made it big, like hadn't made that leap in the same way on the West Coast as it did on the East Coast. And so, because I go to the East Coast every year to visit family and my in-laws. And so they were like, we're going to put out this new canned cocktail. And I had spent the last 10 years as a brewer and going, oh, okay. And so it's very different, but if you're familiar with the process, the tanks and the equipment, it wasn't difficult to figure out. And it was something I already done. So it allowed me to kind of move into doing really fun things with Freeland.
So Lee, why is that important to you? Like sustainability and all that, why does that matter to you? Because I know that that's something that some folks, it's very important to, and then others, it's kind of important, but it seems to be like something that's kind of being used as more of a marketing thing than anything. Like, why does that matter to you guys?
It matters in a lot of ways. Being able to the way our food tastes, the terroir matters. It doesn't matter just for wine. I like to tell people, because I deal with honey, um, honey, as like with everything that grows around you, it's unique to the place it is. And for example, we both coasts grow buckwheat, but East Coast buckwheat is very different than West Coast. But also, even if you're going to taste them from like North and South, the honey bees collect, and so it's basically a snapshot of taste and time in a beautiful like amber liquid. And so you can taste the difference of a place and time in food. And I think that one of the things that's really important about growing for local is the fact that we recognize these flavors as being home, and we want to share that with other people. That and the fact that we can get things a little quicker if you make a phone call and be like, I'm going to be there in an hour. Can I get a pallet? I got a truck. So that's nice. So like, you're saving on gas, because they're making all these multiple stops. They're not driving forever. I mean, they have multiple customers. You're not paying all those charges. You're not burning all the fossil fuels. And it's grown there, and people want to know where their food is coming from.
Diversity, equity, and inclusion. And what does that mean to you? And what does that mean to you for this industry? Is it important to you? And if so, why? Or why do you think it should matter to others out there?
I think it matters in a way that people don't understand. People don't understand how much their lived experience affects how they tasting, what they're exposed to. And part of the fact that people don't recognize that something is possible until they see somebody else doing it. It's really hard for people to be a front runner. And people don't realize when you're a front runner, you often don't know you're a front runner because there's nobody next to you.
Yeah.
And it's not until you look behind you and people see you and they're rushing to catch up that you were there. And I didn't see anybody who looked like me in the brewing industry. I still see very people who look like me. I see way more women, and that is wonderful, but I see very few women of color. But it's changing, and I like that. But one of the reasons that I do it, and I do interviews like this, or I do anything, is the fact that when I was teaching, I was also teaching a lot of first generation college students who probably in the first time in their entire life saw somebody with a higher degree standing in front of the classroom teaching them. And they thought, oh, I didn't even know that was possible till now. And that's a really powerful thing to have people realize that that's a whole nother window or door that's been opened up. It's why I always volunteered to do homebrew demonstrations. I can't tell you how many times over the last 10 years I've been at events and people have come up to when I was with my homebrew club, they would come up to us because they saw me standing there. And A, they wanted to know why. And B, they wanted to talk to me. And then they were like, I've always had this interest, but I didn't know that I could do it.
Yeah. I wondered if you might speak for just a moment on the importance of representation, right? Yes. Because that's what it's really about when we do things like She Brew. Can you speak to that and your opinion on the importance of it?
The importance of it is, I've always entered competitions, and because they're entered blind, nobody knows who you are. But for She Brew, we specifically wanted women who were like, maybe they'd just been brewing with a spouse or on their own, and they're like, I didn't know I was good enough. And so they were like, this is a competition that feels like it's going to be safer, because they're like, well, I'm entering with everybody else, and we'll see what kind of feedback we're going to get. And the adage being that, this you probably heard this, like people of color, women, we have to be at 100. We're at 99% before we do anything, so that nobody can say that we weren't well prepared. Whereas other folks may get to 60%, completely unqualified, and have the absolute kind of like, they're like, we're going to do this. And I think that having something that's just single sex, when people go, well, what about this? What about me? And I was like, I don't know, find me a competition where you can enter. There's one competition that just says only for women, identified women. And I was like, out of how many other competitions? And this is the one that you're not in. Like, sometimes everybody doesn't have to be in the room, and people have to be okay with that.
Where do you see kind of like the immediate future of this industry? Anything in specifically you think, hey, look, this is something that people should be taking a look at, or this is something people should be backing off of? What's your opinion?
With the beginning of the pandemic that happened, that we're still in, what I saw and what I noticed was people's willingness to buy closer to home and what can they get around them that they didn't think about before, because we have so many brands and things are coming in from all over, and the ability to be able to be like, well, breweries were like, hey, we'll deliver to your house. Distilleries were like, we will deliver, cocktails. We'll do all these things. You get this outside experience inside your house. And it's easier to do when people were looking at what was closer to home. And so definitely finding, even the big brands are making things as central, or as, what's the word I'm looking for? They're targeting people's need to be closer to home and to support local. And I've seen in the last 2 years, a lot more of folks wanting to support what's around them.
If you were able to, kind of go back in time a little bit and talk to yourself or someone that's coming into the industry right now, is there any piece of advice you'd give to either yourself or someone that's about to get into this industry that would help kind of fast track their success?
Yes. Know as much as you can, so that you're asking the right kinds of questions. If you have an interest in something, now a lot of things you can do on your own at home with really low products, so that when you go in and you like, this is really what I want to do, you can ask the kinds of questions that don't leave the other person feeling like they have to teach you everything from the ground up. And as much as we want to, if you don't know what barley looks like, but you want to be a brewer, you probably should at least know where your local homebrew shop is. If you want to be a distiller, but you've got to know all those basic things. Like, you have to know, like, oh, okay, all their books out there, their TV shows. There are things that can kind of help give you a leg up, so that when you go in, you're going in with at least something that shows that I know I am passionate about this and I've made the first steps. I just need some help kind of getting to the next level. That, for me, feels like shows a level of commitment.
As we're closing, how can people get in touch with you? Where's the best way that, where people can find you, talk to you, reach out to you?
Several ways. You can find me on Instagram.
Okay.
I'm pretty funny.
What's your handle?
The Barreled Bee.
The Barreled Bee. Got it. Guys, write that down, The Barreled Bee. And Lee says she's funny, so I hold her to that.
Yes. And then you can also find me on Freelance Spirits on our website. You can just email us there, and they always can get a hold of me. I'm pretty easy to be found. And I honestly I will respond, because I think it's important. If people take the effort to reach out, it's the least I can do is to respond in any way I can.
Lee, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, thank you.
Again, shout out to American Distilling Institute for allowing us this platform to elevate these wonderful professionals like Lee that are doing great work out there. And make sure that you guys come see us at the conference this year. I will be there. Probably.
You're going?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll be there. We'll have a booth, and I'm going to make sure that I do my best to make sure that everyone that was part of our program is there. And when you guys see them, make sure you say hi and say, I saw you. All right, Lee, thank you again. And I
Thank
look forward to
you.
seeing you soon.
Okay.